game is Thunderforce 5. Here in the United States, we're missing a Thunderforce 4. It was actually called Lightening Force on the Sega Genesis, and if you've seen my review of Lightening Force, you'll realize that lightning was not spelled like the cool electrical kind of lightning, but lightning as if you were lightening the color of the wall. I'm glad that they dropped that and went straight back to Thunderforce, which is a lot cooler than some other titles I could have come up with, like Whisper Force, slaughtering your enemies by whispering sweet nothings in their alien spacecraft ears. You know why Thunder is a better title? Because it sounds cooler. And this game is awesome. There's not much better in life than being in a spaceship that can blow all kinds of shit up with different weapons that increase in power when you pick up spinning, glowing things that happen to be randomly flying at you in two-dimensional environments that would be seemingly impossible to actually exist in real life. You know, that's so true. I agree with her every time she says that. I have no idea what she just said. As those of you who watch this show know, I'm a huge fan of the Thunderforce series and the details that Technosoft, in particular, puts into their video games. I grew up with Thunderforce 2 and Thunderforce 3 on the Sega Genesis. More recently, I've been immersed in Lightening Force, aka Thunderforce 4. Thunderforce 5 was originally released in 1997 on the Sega Saturn and on the PlayStation in 1998. Like most shooting games, there's some kind of half-baked story about aliens in a computer or some kind of force that's attacking Earth, and they have lots of spaceships and lots of money and, you know, subcontract out with these huge companies to build end bosses that are somewhat capable, yet always have a weak point that you can exploit and blow them to bits. You can learn more about the story by buying the game and listening to the introduction. I thought it was a lot cooler to show off some of the amazing music that Thunderforce 5 has with the intro to this review. Let's take a look at the gameplay and some of the differences and similarities between Thunderforce 5 and some of the earlier versions on the Genesis. This is on the PlayStation 1, so the graphics aren't bad. They're not great either. It's colorful. The gameplay is tremendous, like you would expect from any Thunderforce game. You can adjust the speed of your spaceship, which I always enjoy. And we have some familiar weapons like the Hunter weapon, which has been around for years. And I always love how excited the computer sounds when she tells you, Hunter! It's like the computer just knows how badass that weapon is. Because you don't even have to aim. It hunts out the enemies and destroys them for you. It's like the Postal Service of Annihilation, because you're writing checks of destruction that Hunter delivers for you to the enemies who cache them and then explode into fireballs. Could you imagine this woman's voice on a GPS telling you where to go? Turn left at giant exploding monster. The best weapon in the game, and in fact the instruction manual even says this is the best weapon in the game, is free range. Which is probably the coolest weapon I've ever seen in a shooting game. It's incredibly destructive. The closer you get to the enemy, the more damage you do. So you can just wipe out end bosses and various large ships with the free range. It's a little tricky to get used to because of the way that you control it. But once you've mastered that free range weapon, the enemies in this game fear you, and you can sense their fear right before you incinerate them with the free range. This game has something else called the over weapon, where you can fire off one of your spinning craw devices, and that's pretty useful for destroying some difficult end bosses. You can equip 3 of those craws at once and really turn yourself into a destructive force. I'm only covering the first 3 levels of Thunderforce 5 here on the first part of this classic game room review. And like Thunderforce 4, you get to pick the order in which you play the first 3 levels. The game is incredibly challenging, but not so difficult that you can't play it a number of times and figure out some of the ins and outs of the different end bosses in different levels. And I'm really glad they kept this game in a 2-dimensional environment, because can you imagine how unbelievably irritating it would be to actually look out the front of your window, see 3 big blue balls spinning around in front of you, and the weapons in this game are so big that they would just completely obstruct your vision if you were flying around. One of the great things about 2-dimensional shooters is that by looking at your spaceship from the side, you get a better perspective of what's going on, because you know the pilot in that thing is like, man, I can't see shit, but there's lots of stuff exploding and blinking in front of me, and it kind of looks pretty cool. We'll see you again in part 2 as we get into the rest of Thunderforce 5, and there's a lot in this game. And as I understand it, there's going to be a Thunderforce 6, and I demand that we get that over here in the States, and for God's sakes, don't call it Lightning Force 2. So until next time, all I have to say is... Classic Game Room.